and which means, I guess we can go straight to the
Mike,
site redevelopment issues.
I'd like to have everyone identify themselves. That would be helpful.
Good.
I'm Bob Spencer, Chair of the Planning Commission. Martin, you're right there. Also,
Martin Langeveld, member of the commission. Tom?
Tom Rappaport, a member of the Planning Commission.
Okay. Mark Westa?
Hey everybody, Mark Wester with Stevens Associates.
Okay. Jennifer?
Jen Stromston from BDCC, the Regional Development Corporation.
Okay. And Tom Barry?
Tom Barry, Senator Leahy's office, Vermont.
Okay. And Jim? Jim Hamilton?
Hi, Jim Hamilton from Nuclear Decommissioning Collaborative.
All right. Sara Coffey?
Hi, folks. Sara Coffey. I'm the state representative for Vernon and Guilford and the Vermont Assembly.
All right. Matthew?
Hi, I'm in now. Thank you.
Good. That's Maddie Arms.
you make a quorum for us, Maddie. Thank you.
All right. Matthew?
Sure, Matthew Suchodolsky, U.S. Economic Development Administration, and I appreciate the opportunity to listen in this evening. Thank you.
All right. Wendy Harrison?
Hello, Wendy Harrison, Interim Town Administrator, Town of Vernon.
And Haley?
There, I'm Haley Perro. I'm from Senator Bernie Sanders' office in Vermont.
Okay. And Thea?
Thea Wurzburg. I'm with Congressman Peter Welch's office in Vermont.
All right. And Chris?
Chris Saunders with Senator Leahy's office. I work on economic development for him here in Vermont.
Okay. And Chad, are you able to speak? No, but that's Chad Baldwin, Vernon resident. So, Bob, what would you like to do?
Well, I'd like to go right to the agenda. Do we have any public comments? We always put that on there. I don't think we do. Modifications to the agenda? Any want to add something? I think we have plenty, actually. Now we're at the approval of minutes, and that would be for our March meeting, which was our reorganizational meeting. Does someone want to make a motion on the minutes, please?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the March meeting.
Second.
Is there any discussion, any changes? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, approved. Thank you, Martin, for the minutes as usual. And now we get to go to our main topic of the evening, the EDA grant application strategy. That was my term. I'm not sure if that's the best way to describe it, but I'm going to turn this over to Martin Langeveld, who has been our primary EDA grant writer and has previous EDA grant experience in the region and has worked with Matthew and others. You got it, Martin.
All right. Well, I want to thank all of our visitors for joining us for this. It's quite a group to assemble for a little town like Vernon. And what I think we would like to get out of this is some direction, advice, strategies for moving forward. Just to briefly set the scene, I think you're all kind of familiar with this, but Vernon submitted 2 separate applications last year to the EDA for a grant in the range of $100,000, which would have been matched by the town with $100,000 to do planning for the eventual redevelopment of the Vermont Yankee site beginning in 2026, when North Star aims to be done decommissioning. Both of those applications were rejected. The first one included a small portion for some planning work relating to the Vernon Village area that's outside the plant site. And the application basically, or the rejection letter basically said, EDA, that's not a focus of EDA, it's going to be residential. And we invite you to reapply with a focus purely on the plant site. So we did that. We made some revisions and matched it again. And this time it was rejected for totally different reasons. That a couple things that were mentioned were that, this was, the closing of this plant was too long ago. The sort of, it's outside of their frame of interest. And that we mentioned in the application that most of the people who worked at VY had become reemployed somewhere else or had retired. And so based on that, the rejection said, well, it doesn't seem like there's been a huge economic impact since everybody has gotten reemployed, which of course is not really the case. But so we decided to let it sit for a while. In the meantime, we have a small grant from the state of Vermont to do some planning, which Mark Westa from Stevens and Associates is heading up. We're just getting started on Mark's phase, but we've worked with folks at Antioch, New England, to do a story map, kind of a multi-layer mapping exercise for the site. And now we'll go into something that will at least sort of conceptually do a master plan for the site, but obviously not the kind of plan that we were applying to the EDA for, which would have been much more detailed and gotten into really the deep technical nitty-gritties of how to redevelop a site like this. So I think that sort of sets the scene. But I guess what I'd like to do is ask Jim to speak a little bit to that, maybe just start us off, and then other people can weigh in. Jim's organization, I think you can introduce that a little bit, but Jim's organization is working with the EDA specifically on these post-nuclear communities, economic development issues. So Jim?
Thanks, Matt. Can you all hear me? Cool. My name is Jim Hamilton. I'm an executive director of the Nuclear Decommissioning Collaborative. We're a nonprofit. We've been around for a few years. Our goal is to help mitigate socioeconomic impacts from nuclear power plant closures. We've got a website, we're up and running. We got a report we produced a couple months ago, or actually in October of last year. We did a national survey of these issues and tried to outline best practices and those sorts of things. I've met most of you on the call. It's nice to see you all again. I'm pretty familiar with the Vermont situation, not the applications itself, but the general sense of the plant and the dynamics around there. In the fall of last year, so I've been working with EDA for about 3 years now. The first couple of years was trying to get a lay of the land and a general sense of which way north is on nuclear decommission and closures. And again, the report was the product of that. In the fall of 20, EDA put out a solicitation and we responded along with 3 other organizations, Smart Growth America, NATO, the National Association of Development Organizations, and C-Clear, a land recycling outfit. And we've been retained by EDA to assist host communities such as yourself in planning economic development strategies post-closure, all right? The actual guttural goal of us is to help EDA get money out the door, all right? By doing that, and the way we do that is we help communities such as Vernon and regional entities submit good grant applications. That's the unofficial goal of what we're trying to accomplish here. EDA has a pot of money that's targeted for nuclear closure communities. Our job is to help them spend it. And the way they spend it is they get quality applications in the door, and that's how things work. That's the super high level view of what we do. We're doing work all over the country, in California, New England, the Eastern Seaboard, in the Midwest. And our team of people can help bolster applications. We can do original research. We don't write the applications for you, but we can certainly provide data, information, resources, those sorts of things to help strengthen the overall offering. That and a quarter buys you a cup of coffee. There is no guarantee of any of success around this. There's no way I could guarantee that. But our job is to help you prepare and submit quality applications, and then we see where the cookie crumbles after that. But that's the very high level view here. As far as next steps with Vernon and the surrounding region, we'd be more than happy to see what we can do to help position the next application, should you decide to submit one, to have a better chance of being received. Specifically, what's that look like right now, I don't know, but we can, like I said before, we can help with studies, we can help frame and position it. I will give you a couple of observations off the top of my head. Applications that are successful with EDA have a couple of common criteria. One is a very strong link between plant closure and economic harm. I know that sounds very simple and straightforward, but that's a threshold that works. The other one is, and I'm just going to be frank, site reuse. A narrow focus on site reuse tends not to work super well. That's just that's the experience that we have seen across the country. EDAs, I'm not going to speak for Matthew, and I don't speak for EDA at all, but the general sense is that narrow focus on site reuse misses the boat. What they want to see is they want to see planning, they want to see research, they want to see understanding how economic development can come out of closure and decommissioning. But a focus on site reuse in their mind, I think, tends to sort of try and short circuit some of that. It can be a component of a larger story, but like I said, just a focus on that tends not to work super well in the application process. That's a very high level summary of what we do and how we can be helpful, and my observations on where you all may be. If you go back and decide to go for a third time, maybe, I'm not saying site reuse is off the table, but maybe it's part of a larger conversation. Maybe it's part of a more regional plan. Maybe it's part of something a little bit bigger. I don't know. I can't tell you right now, but I'm just saying that if the title of the application is site reuse planning, you kind of know what I'm thinking about. But I'm not saying it's not important. I'm saying it's not going to be front and center. And I'm happy to answer any questions and hope that was helpful.
Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I want to make 2 points. One is our first rejection letter invited us to do exactly that, to resubmit an application focused on the site. And secondly, this is the town of Vernon. It doesn't have basically land elsewhere that it can turn into, make available for economic development. This site is pretty much it as far as space where we could do something like that. And we've said we want to be the one place where a nuclear plant, after being decommissioned, where the site actually does get redeveloped. It seems like a prime place to redevelop, and It hasn't been done for a variety of reasons at other nuclear sites, but we'd like to lead the way on that.
You know, I can't speak for previous decisions or applications or comments on any of that. I don't know the details of what happened before. What I can say with a reasonable amount of confidence is what I'm seeing coming in the pipeline around the country and what tends to work. And that's the best I can offer you, you know, at this point from my perspective.
Okay. So I guess I'd like to turn to our representatives of our delegation to see what thoughts they may have. And I know that Tom, I believe, is particularly involved in this kind of issue. Tom, can you speak to that?
Well, actually, where the EDA is concerned, I would hand off to my colleague, Chris Saunders. I deal more with nuclear issues on the energy side of the portfolio, but where the EDA is concerned, I'd look to Chris to see whether he might want to weigh in.
Okay, Chris.
Sure. You know, I think in talking with you and Bob previously over the past year, and pardon my puppy who is wanting to say hello. You know, Senator Leahy wrote this program into the EDA annual appropriation with the town of Vernon in mind. And, you know, we have worked with him over the past couple of years to encourage EDA to focus on this topic. And then, as Jim mentioned, for the first time included some real capital for communities to put forward and be able to tackle the problem with dedicated resources and money set aside within their budget. So I think to say that he was disappointed that this program, which, you know, was developed around Vernon as an ideal community, to see the community not get funded was pretty frustrating. I would say, excuse me for just one moment. That you know, I think in our conversations, and again, we're not going to speak for EDA, but our what we have seen and experienced has been similar to what Jim has described, is that understanding that the town is a small one and with limited resources, to the degree kind of setting aside the past applications, thinking bigger about what opportunities the town may hope to realize from an EDA investment, and putting that together might help. You know, I think sometimes our federal agencies are challenged with small grant applications in weighing them against the needs of a larger community or a larger application, even for a small community. And I think when you see what's been funded from this set aside, it's typically been larger projects, and as Jim noted, not always just with a site redevelopment component. So, you know, we are not going to tell you all what to do, what the town should do. We're, you know, I think what we've tried to do is set aside resources that you could secure to achieve what the town wants, and we will. The senator will support you in whatever direction you go, and try and make clear to the EDA, regardless of whether it's a small application or a large one, that you know, his expectation would be that this is a community that gets help. You know, part of the reason that, you know, as you noted, many of the former employees now have new jobs is because there have not been government agencies that have stepped up and said, here are resources to deal with the workforce issue you're experiencing. So, you know, I would echo a lot of what Jim said. I think it would be worthwhile to, you know, certainly give Matthew a fair amount of airtime to speak to the EDA perspective. But the core message is that Senator Leahy's team will support you in whatever direction you want to have.
Okay. Could we jump to the other delegation members who are represented, maybe Haley?
Sure. Thank you for having me. And, just to echo a lot of what Chris is saying, we want to see how we can be supportive as a delegation of your applications to EDA. And I would just reflect that from my perspective, you did all the right things. You saw this opportunity that Senator Leahy helped create. You got a letter of support from the delegation. I assume you were in touch with EDA previously, and I know you have been since. Representative Coffey brought this issue to my attention, and then engaging with Jim as well. So I know that's not very useful advice because your application was not successful, but for what it's worth, I wanted to mention that. And I would just take the opportunity to mention that Senator Saunders and Congressman Welch have introduced in past years a nuclear plant decommissioning act, and Senator Leahy has co-sponsored that. We're looking to reintroduce that. So this is helpful in our discussions to know how we can maybe help target some funding. Right now, that includes provisions for spent fuel storage. So that would go directly to Vernon. Then it does have EDA grants that have been expanded, would expand eligibility, but perhaps we can talk with our policy counterparts about how we can also make sure that that's well targeted so that Vernon can access that funding as well.
Okay, Thea?
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add. I would just kind of reiterate what Haley just said about the Nuclear Decommissioning Act. We're hoping to reintroduce that soon, and it is very helpful to hear from all of you on, what could be helpful, that if there are any changes that we can make in the bill. And I'm happy to share, I can put it in the chat, but the link to the bill that we introduced last Congress. So far, we haven't made any changes to it. So the language is still the same, but if you have a chance to look through it, I believe it's section 4 is kind of outlines the EDA grant side, but it does have some money in there that would be for communities like Vernon who are being impacted by this decommissioning process. So, and also just, whatever we can continue to do to be supportive of you if you move forward with another application. I am not an EDA expert by any means, and I don't unfortunately cover that issue in our office, but I think Chris is definitely the most well-versed in this of the delegation here. So I'm glad he's on.
Okay. I wonder if I could call on Jennifer, who represents the BDCC, but she also has, in a previous life, considerable experience, I guess, thinking about post-nuclear communities and what they might be doing. And specifically, I wonder whether, Jennifer, whether you see an opportunity for anything along the lines that Jim suggested, and I think maybe Chris alluded to, a larger project where this site work might be just a portion of a larger regional project.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to your point, Martin, as you mentioned earlier, the original application was actually a larger concept. It was sort of a kind of a mixed use redevelopment concept that tied the kind of village development with the site redevelopment. And that is the thing that makes the most sense for Vernon, right? I mean, Vernon is, in the context of the regional economy, a bedroom community, and that's appropriate. And having some more activity that's commercial and other things makes sense, and maybe some other industrial reuses for the site, but that would be determined by the findings from a real site study, like what's possible and what there's a market for. I think there are some conceptual problems just with the framework that EDA uses. EDA is kind of insensitive to the needs of rural scale to a large extent, and it's also very driven, and this relates, by job creation. The irony is that the real problem we face in rural Vermont, as in a lot of rural communities, is that we have jobs that can't be filled. We don't have enough people. And to keep those jobs, we need more people. And so we need more projects like what Vernon proposed to create more homes and more economic centers within bedroom communities and villages and towns to be able to accommodate the people that we need. We have both a housing shortage and a people shortage. And so one of the only ways we're going to be able to stabilize our economy, much less grow it, and then to grow jobs, is to have the people that we need to fuel the economy. So it's just a real problem with the EDA framework. I want to put this context in, this rejection of these applications by EDA in context. I think there are a lot of EDA applications across Vermont that didn't get funded. I think most of them, maybe all of them this year. And, we put in an application for something that was for business navigators, and we're told that that wasn't a thing that they saw a need for. Ironically, the SBA and Treasury have issued a white paper recently kind of saying that that is the best practice in terms of business development and recovery and resilience, is to deploy business navigators to help with entrepreneurship. So like, we know that we're doing the right things. And a lot of our work at BDCC grows out of the VY recovery work, some of which was funded by, the planning was funded by EDA, and some of that other work is funded by EDA. So, so that's, we're just kind of all in the same boat right now, that there seemed to be a mismatch between what we're trying to accomplish and what we think there's an alignment, and EDA's perception of that. There's some missed context. There really is a problem with the framing. I think, Martin, you also alluded to this. The time frame, basically Vernon doesn't really quite fall into the parameters laid forth because their closure was too long ago. That flies in the face of all known research about economic recovery planning from a disaster, particularly from a nuclear power plant. We lost $500 million a year in the economy, 600 jobs, and many of those workers from the economy. And we know when we look at GDP that we have not recovered that money. So I'm not really sure why that time frame was placed on the nuclear money for EDA, but it's really problematic, and it doesn't line up with the true recovery time frame. And it also doesn't line up with the realities of local planning, that the time that it takes, most communities won't get started on taking this seriously until it's kind of closure time. No matter how much you try to plan ahead, just everything else sucks away your energy, especially the safety and health and environmental concerns. By the time you're trying to deal with the economic impacts, it is a couple of years out. It's a few years out. And that's going to be typical. And this is going to be a problem for every community going forward. So I really strongly urge a revisiting of the way the time frame that was placed around this money. Those are my high points.
Okay, and just to follow up, is BDCC looking at any new ideas for EDA funded or other federal funded projects that this VY site planning might sort of piggyback onto?
Not necessarily, but that's not off the table. I mean, if we come up with a view, if we come up with a larger concept, we will be happy to partner on that. And that's, that sounds great. We don't have anything in the pipeline right now.
Yeah, all right. So for Jim had suggested, think bigger, and Chris also said think bigger. But then the think bigger is right now is sort of in search of a project or projects. Jim?
I mean, I'm not going to take this with a grain of salt, but step way back, all right? EDA got a pot of money they had to spend, and they allocated a piece of that to a bunch of people like me to help them spend it. Why did they do that? Maybe they're seeing applications previously didn't quite meet their thresholds, or maybe they were a little bit out of line, or whatever it is. But I think your experience it wasn't great to lose, to go 0 for 2. But what I'm trying to say is that, for better or worse, there's some help here now that might be able to help reframe this. And it's free, right? I mean, it's already paid for. And maybe we can help with this visioning piece. Maybe we can help figure out what you might want to bolt on to a site reuse planning exercise that may make this application more palatable. I'm not trying to force myself on you, but I'm saying we've got people who are good at this, who can help, if you want, facilitate some conversations, do some work, do some research that may help position this to be a more competitive application next go around, if you choose to do it. mean,
Yeah.
you're talking right now about, what may make sense. What I'm trying to suggest is that if you're willing, we'd be happy to help engage in that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to want to do that. Don't worry about that.
I'm not trying to force it. I'm just saying that that's there, and that's different than it was a year ago.
Right. That's why you're here, and that's why everybody's here. And I'm kind of hoping, and maybe if Mark is still there, he went dark for a moment, Mark, could you speak to how the current rather small, $20,000 Vermont funded project might, also help to shape what it is that we really want to be working on, and could we include Jim in that project?
Sure. Well, so we are planning to look mostly at the site and consider sort of different alternatives of reuse. But, in each of those categories, there might be connections off-site or kind of community-wide that makes sense. And I don't see any reason why we can't, at least put those on the table and talk about them. I don't think with $20,000, we're going to go down the road too far, but at least they can be part of the conversation, and maybe they have an impact on what we're thinking of specifically for the site. And then in the language and, maybe diagrammatically almost, we're looking at the bigger picture.
This is Bob Spencer. I just wanted to reiterate that the Town of Vernon Planning Commission has been working on a number of other smaller planning projects with the VY site involved. An update on our town plan, the village center, which is linked, and now this third municipal planning grant focused on the VY site. And in addition to that was the North Star group funding a project with Antioch New England Graduate School, and that storybook presentation is available. And so we have done about as much as we can as a volunteer planning commission in a small town. And so we really do need help to take this to the next level, whatever that might be. I wanted to invite Sara Coffey, our state rep, to weigh in here because she's helped organize previous meetings, including this one, with players in the energy sector 2 years ago. We just have a great, federal and state delegation here to work with, and we appreciate it, believe me. Sara?
Sure, great. Well, thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight and to speak. And I just am grateful to have this is a great collection of good thinkers to be together to think about the future of Vernon. And, as Bob and Martin have talked about, there've been a number of, community conversations, planning projects. And one of the things that we organized, I guess it was 2 Septembers ago, where we really focused on the energy conversation. And what I took away from that conversation, we had some of the players in Vermont, and there it's pretty, and the energy field is pretty complex. And I think that at the same time, the town of Vernon, what I've been hearing, Vernon sees itself as an energy town, and with what's going on within the state of Vermont, for us to be looking at creative solutions to our energy production and energy storage, and given the infrastructure that's on the site in Vernon, it seems to me that there's an opportunity. And now with the federal money coming into our state, the way we're thinking about in the legislature is how can we use this money to be transformative? And it seems to, I wanted to ask some of the folks here about their, if they have any suggestions about whether we are barking up the wrong tree, if an energy renewable project, such as the one that Bob Spencer shared earlier today, the article that he wrote based on a visit, part of a delegation visit to Denmark. And I think, Tom, I've seen you in a lot of the energy rooms. I wonder if you might want to comment on what that would, what suggestions do you have for this, this energetic small town that wants to be part of, it's part of this conversation. What do you think? And others too, but that's where I'm coming from. I'm really thinking that with all these things that are happening in our state, we have the climate council that's focusing on this as well. There could be a way to align things both within the state and at the federal level too. So Tom, is that okay if we?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak briefly to that. And, I think there is a lot of opportunity, and there will be for some time to come on, on the energy front as far as projects and collaborations. And I think Vernon was headed in the right direction with some planning efforts, although, those have not advanced at this point. But there's, I could be more familiar with what some of the proposals have been for the site, but certainly the positioning of grid infrastructure in relation to the site. And, there's lots of potential opportunity if the right planning can be advanced. There's talk about storage projects or renewable energy projects that probably could be a good fit. And whether through direct federal funding with some of the bills that are moving, or opportunities with all of the work that's being done right now to improve the grid. I think there could be some good projects that could land, and what might come out of the EDA project or another similar project would be some of the advanced planning and collaborations.
Would something like, this is me not being an energy expert, but would an EDA grant be the kind of thing that could be used should the town of Vernon want to pursue an energy related project? And would it be the kind of thing that we could use to get somebody who could help in the energy development consulting world to really transform the thinking and attract potential folks who might be interested in developing the site at that level? It's a pretty complex negotiation. I know that. Is that the kind of thing that, partnering with our regional economic development folks, our regional planning folks, with somebody like that, is that of interest? Is it pie in the sky, or should we be looking at housing? Should the town be thinking about what it could do as a bedroom community to Brattleboro?
I think as far as, certainly Chris and Matt would know better, and maybe Jim, as far as the use of EDA dollars. But I think the answer is probably yes, as far as EDA or other federal funds potentially being available if there was a energy project that there was, getting to critical mass, I guess, is the question. And if there was an energy related project that was queued up to advance, EDA, the Department of Energy, has funds, and there's certainly a lot of talk about potential energy infrastructure funding, both through some of the money that's already come to the state and then in an infrastructure bill. So I think the answer is yes, and how to organize a project that with the right players to advance seems to be the question.
This is Bob again. We did have a Vermont-based developer meet with a subcommittee of the Planning Commission, not this summer, interested in hydrogen fuel cell manufacturing. And the pitch was pretty compelling, that this is the future. The site has lots of siting criteria that they would look for. So, I mean, there's even that phase of energy. We're not generating power with something like that, but be part of the components of the energy field sector. So I think there's more of those type of things out there, but we just don't know. And I think, like Sara was saying, maybe we can bring in, using federal funding, some experts to help us identify those opportunities. Like an RFP that if we started now, or requests for expressions of interest, get us on the map. I don't know, but so I think I'd like to ask for comments from the rest of our planning commission, and then we have Wendy from the town representing the select board as a town administrator. And
before you go there,
Oh,
I just,
sure.
I want to ask Matthew if he wants any equal time on behalf of the EDA here, or add any other wisdom on everything that we've been talking about.
Certainly. Thank you, Martin.
Sure, thank you for the opportunity, and I am more than willing to defer until the regional and local stakeholders, some of which are citizen representatives, have their airtime per se. So I'm willing to defer to that and stick it out for a few. I think what the town of Vernon, what representatives, professional and civic-minded here from Windham County have here, especially with Mr. Hamilton's team, or opening toward further work with that team, presents an opportunity. It presents a certain set of resources that are not necessarily a grant award or a check. But let's think about Jim's team here. Nuclear Decommissioning Collaborative, National Association of Development Organizations, Smart Growth America. There's some expertise there. There's some expertise there that will be able to draw in, concepts, game plans that are being considered by peer communities, peer regions that are going through similar situations. I think that wraparound of services could be helpful as the town continues to, the town and the region, I should say, and the state continue to hone in on what is an economic rebound based on this long-term dislocation. Apart from that, I'm not much of a crossing guard or a, coach with the whistle around the neck. But I would certainly recommend that the town think about Mr. Hamilton and the resources that he brings from developing concepts, vetting those concepts, and seeing what has the best legs, and also to prompt the stakeholders here, local, county, regional, and statewide, to think about the scale of that approach for a particular funding agency with a particular funding opportunity noted as nuclear closure communities. So that wraparound scale capacity that's being brought in, or potentially brought in, and scale. Martin, can I take a moment and share the screen?
Sure.
All right, and yeah, let me figure this function out here. And that is okay. It's disabled. You got to let me do it. You got to you got to open the door for me.
I think you can do that by making him a co-host, Martin.
Yeah, I just did.
All right, let's all right. Are you able to see what's on there?
Yes.
Okay, and does it say 307.3 use of economic adjustment assistance investments?
It does.
It does. Great. Okay. This is the generalized terms, the generalized menu of what economic adjustment assistance investments through EDA can do. This is the menu for applicants, those groups, those organizations that are interested. Nuclear closure communities, as a set aside, falls under this particular programming, economic adjustment assistance investments. So, you know, I have a duty to share this with you this evening and make sure that it's there and that you're aware of it. You know, economic adjustment as a federal programming tool within a particular agency, it's the widest ranging tool. You know, in casual terms, it can be so-called study money, feasibility studies. We'll go back to the spring of 2015, when Brattleboro Development was able to capture a $400,000 grant for capacity building relative to the green building cluster analysis. They did some very good work with that project. The job results associated with that project were pretty darn good. The latitude in which BDCC extended itself to do SEDS alignment with your neighbors to the south in Franklin County, as well as your neighbors to the east in Cheshire County for comprehensive economic development strategy alignment, a novel approach. 3 different counties, 3 different states. I mean, who can pull that off in the regimen of the federal world, right? So, you know, some good work was done there by your regional partners under that programming. So I do want to share that with folks. And, you know, I certainly see with the import of Jen and BDCC, as well as Jim and the Nuclear Collaborative, Decommissioning Collaborative, as well as his extended partners, the National Association for Development Organizations and Smart Growth America. I think there's a good opportunity for the power of the intellect that's on the other side of this call to really engage and draw a focus that here's the indicator that may be of a larger scale, not only dollar-wise, but also a regional benefit. I think I went on for too long there, but you know, those are the cheerleading points that I have for you. Please be prompted to think about a potentially larger scale, dollar-wise, and larger scale of economic benefit.
Oh, that's very helpful, Matthew. Thank you. We have Maddie Arms and Tom Rappaport from our Planning Commission on, and I wanted to see if they'd like to ask any questions.
Matthew, if you could just bounce the hosting back to me, thanks.
Yeah, I have a question for Jim and Mr. Suchodolsky. It was a little difficult when we heard that the town of Verplank actually scored a rather substantial EDA grant. Verplank not being the town that actually hosts Indian Point, because that's Buchanan. And it seemed to be for something that was really just totally recreational, which is nice. And of course, it's a high density area, but it seems a little incongruous when you compare that we are a town who's trying to, you know, in some ways replicate a financial loss to rise above that and actually make something of ourselves. So how do you get your head around that kind of award with all the work that went into the 2 applications that we've submitted and that were then rejected?
Yeah, I would like to approach that very carefully, of course. EDA funding is discretionary. The individuals that make, that write the rules, a couple 100 miles south to me, it's a discretionary program. I happen to not view this as a rear view mirror on a competition between one particular suburb of New York City and one particular village. That's a satellite of Brattleboro. I would, from the applications and that I churn, as well as the many stakeholders I engage with, I can understand how a 2020 hindsight look back portrays it as a competition. But please, each application decisions are made on a discretionary basis unto themselves. So I assure you, from my standpoint at EDI, there was no pitting or competition between one small rural community in Vermont and one New York City bedroom community. There was no competition between the two.
I wasn't suggesting there was a competition. I was trying to get an idea or put my head around how the rationale for the decision.
Yeah, the rationale for each of those was done independently at different points in time. I do not stand behind or represent what the rationale for that New York-based project was. Quite frankly, I never put my eyes on that application. I am not a decision maker on what comes in and what comes out. So, it's hard to comment on that. But I would, if we are looking in the rear view, I would also consider, think about the scale relative to readiness to proceed and the amount of dollars that were granted. That's the best I can do for you, Maddie. I don't have a pat answer for you at my staff level.
Jim,
Well,
anything to
does
add?
Jim Hamilton have anything to add to that?
I don't know anything about the New York application. I wasn't involved, and I'm certainly not in a role of deciding anything. I think Matt's point is, let's look forward. There's not a lot to learn about the New York situation from a Vernon perspective. I think the challenge here is to figure out what we all want to do and put our best foot forward.
Okay. Tom Rappaport, Commission member. Any comments, questions? Can you unmute yourself, Tom?
Sorry, I clicked on it, but it didn't respond. I'm thinking back to a very good meeting that Sara pulled together for us a while back. And one of the takeaways I recall from it was the concept of headhunters that rather than putting together people and jobs, put together communities with certain assets and corporations that might be looking for locations. And I just wondered whether that might be relevant to this discussion, in that if we had such consultants and were put together with corporations that might potentially want to come in and help with development, both of the Vermont Yankee site and perhaps related sites, maybe we would benefit from input from those corporations if they said, well, we were very interested, but you would need to have you know, some kind of more advanced, more significant infrastructure of the following kind. And then that would maybe show us, you know, a path, something that we would need to go out and add to what we have to offer at present. I'm not sure I'm just describing this very well, but it would add another type of player to the mix, which is the corporation that wants to come, but we don't quite have what they would be looking for. And then maybe some of this grant money could be used to explore developing the infrastructure that they would want. Anyway, that's my.
Well, that it certainly looked like what Matthew showed us, the EDA program. That's the kind of thing that they could fund.
Yeah.
I see Jim raise his hand on that.
I'm gonna offer you a perspective of what I have seen working and what I believe the decision makers in EDA are looking for. They're not looking for home run balls. They're not looking to see you hit it out of the park right away. What they want to see is measured, phased efforts. The first phase is to understand and model the impact of closure, figure out what those gaps are that you have to fill, and have the data and the resources and the plans developed to try and fill those. That's step one. Once that's in place, then you can start talking about infrastructure will go here to support X. But respectfully, I'm not trying to be critical, and I hope I'm not viewed that way. And I understand the plant's been closed a long time. So there's a level of sort of frustration around this, and I can sense it. But I feel that you may be jumping to step two without doing the boring step one work. My perspective is that EDA wants to fund boring step one work first. And once that's in place, then step 2 and 3 and 4 can follow. And those are larger dollar value projects. Those are infrastructure projects. I think they'd love to get money out the door to do that. But I don't think they can jump there right away. They need to see plans. That's what makes their heart go pitter patter. They want to see the investment in capacity building and structure so that they know when they invest millions of dollars in infrastructure, it has a good chance of succeeding. I'm not trying to squash any of your hopes and dreams. I'm just saying what I see working is boring guttural planning first and then infrastructure second. And I provide that with the best of intention. I'm telling you what I see work.
Yeah, I think that's really, if you look at our previous applications, it's pretty much what we were looking to do, is do the boring part. I also want to react to one thing, which is because it's come up a couple times, is the length of time since the plant was closed. The plant shut down at the end of 2014. And that's what makes it feel like a long time. It's 2021. But really, Entergy's operations did not shut down until the end of 2016. So because there was fuel to be put on the pads and various other things to be done to sort of have an orderly shutdown. So really, the end of 2016 should be seen as the end, as the shutdown date and the end of actual economic activity. And then North Star picked right up after that. So, it's a little bit different time frame than just when did electricity generation stop. Our other member of the panel is Jason. Jason, any questions, comments?
No, thank you, Martin. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, but I don't have any comments or questions at this time.
And what about Wendy, our town
Yeah.
administrator?
Sure. And I actually don't want to take time from hearing from you folks because I'm in heavy listening mode. But some of the questions I have it'd be helpful for me at least to know the range of projects that have happened in other locations. Because I'm new to this field. I like the idea of free help that fits our budget. And I, for one, am a proponent of being blunt and facing up to truths, even if they're difficult. And then a question I have is the role of the property owner, because they're not here tonight, and I don't know what their role is in this process. Again, I'm new to this, but those are the questions that I have. And I really appreciate all of you being here because it's a wonderful representation of the folks who can make things happen. So thanks.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to the role of the property owner right now being North Star. All of our applications and thinking towards this has been on the assumption that when North Star is done with the decommissioning, that they will turn over that site to the town of Vernon or to whoever the town may designate. We have verbal promises to that effect, and I think if we wanted to, go through the process of getting that put down on paper, we could do that. And North Star has been an active participant in the current state-funded project. In fact, they funded it to the tune of I think $40,000 to pay for the work that was done by Antioch. So they're very much a partner in this.
We have also had
Matt's raising his hand, part of the interruption.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you. Much appreciated. Jim did key into a very helpful concept, and that is, that so-called boring homework, right? That needs to go into it, and that continuum of work. I would like to pause for a moment and think about how this particular approach to EDA, now that there is an appropriation specifically for nuclear closure communities, think about that lead-in and what occurred in Windham County leading up to that. There are basically 3 projects, of which all led up to this, were all granted and predicated on the nuclear closure. Now, again, I don't want to go in the rear view mirror, 2020 hindsight, but, Jennifer was involved with those. Martin was involved with one of those. And we had the 2 versions of Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. We had, the first grant to benefit the region was under the leadership of Jeff Lewis, who was basically sleepless over this nuclear closure issue and is probably the evangelical force that, propelled it forward to a larger audience. And then, of course, how with the transfer of leadership there and Adam Grenold, as well as, Jennifer and other colleagues, what they have done with it relative to, and this is perhaps energy related, Wendy, green economy, green building cluster. Lo and behold, the economic analysis was done. And Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was not too much of a spotlight on that cluster. And it was much elevated once BDCC was able to shine a light on it and show people what that green building cluster is all about. So anyway, I don't mean to riff, but think about that continuum of those investments as well as others from other agencies. EDA is not the only one, but yes, we are the topic at hand today. So, you know, again, think about those. I also, and Martin, are you going to let me share the screen again? Because I have some news for folks.
I can do that. Let me make you the host again. There you go.
Thank you.
There.
All right. I'm a little slow on navigating the screenshots. All right. These were just released today for the public. EDA's investment priorities. And there's 7 of them. And I would like to, as you all continue to move forward on these concepts and how you may approach EDA, think about some of these. Because this first one, equity, that wasn't on the table last summer as a priority. It's there. And although it's not capitalized in that listing, you will see in the 4th line down, maybe it's the 5th, rural, the word rural. So please think about that. Underserved communities within geographies that have been systematically and or systematically denied a full opportunity to participate in aspects of economic prosperity, and rural areas. That very last line before the link occurs. Environmentally sustainable development, number 6. That was not called out back in the summer. So, you know, again, these are generalized EDA investment priorities, but please, you know, have a look-see at them. They were just released today. And see how they may align with your, you know, comprehensive economic development strategy. They're broad-based enough, but I do want to point out that rural communities, rural regions are included under that banner of equity. And environmentally sustainable development, as it may, in this case, relate to the future of energy for a particular region, that wasn't on the table before.
Thank you.
I hope that's helpful.
It is. So it sounds like we, as a town, working with BDCC, could regroup and formulate a new proposal with new guidelines to follow and increase our chances of being funded.
I would also like to mention 2 other items, if I may. Maddie, if you care to connect in the future, please consider my service desk phone number, email open to your use and disposal, please.
Thank you.
I want to make sure that's a takeaway. And as some of my colleagues can attest, I like to talk. Sometimes too much, but anyway, that offer is there. And really that extends to anyone. Sometimes EDA decision-making borders on risk aversion. I do want to put that out there, and maybe Jim could elaborate on that as well. And certainly, you know, risk aversion, you know, can be a heavy-duty consideration for our investment review committee and for our regional director, who is a signatory delegate under the Department of Commerce. So that, you know, please consider that as a variable within that larger equation. I'm going to stop, but Maddie, whenever you want to connect, as you wish, more than this door is open.
Thank you. And I appreciate your information about risk aversion. It makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Does anyone else on the call want to have comment or question? Because I'd like to wrap this section up since we have some other agenda items.
I'd like to really thank all of our congressional staffers and Sara and Jennifer, everybody who has joined us, Matthew. I think we've really gotten some good insights. Jim, we're certainly going to be working with you. Don't worry about it. We'll be back, and we'll go from there. Did you want to say something, Jim?
Just to beat a dead horse, but Matt's discussion about risk aversion and site reuse. There's again, every community we go to talks about site reuse, and our job has been to steer them away from that for a bunch of reasons. One is you don't own it. Two is there's going to be spent fuel there for the next 50 years. And there's uncertainty and risk around that. It's nobody's fault, but there's uncertainty and risk. So do the boring planning work first, make that a potential to consider once phase one is done. But again, EDA wants to fund things that have a beginning and a middle and an end and an outcome they can buy into. If you put something into that equation that's got error bars around it, a little bit uncertain, I would respectfully suggest it scares them. So stay away from that for the first piece. Do the foundational planning work. And then once that's in place, then you can do options and scenarios in the future when you have more information and when site control may be something you can influence. So that's my last 2 cents, but I wanted to pick up on what Matt said, because I think it was right on. I think it resonated with Maddie as well. They're an incredibly risk-averse organization, but they're trying to help. And so, that's it.
Well, I think that's a good segue to our next agenda item, which is to look at our next planning project, which is focused on the VY site. And I do want to thank this great group of, legislators and staff and helping out Vernon. I know you're all very committed to this. You've been consistently helpful. And anyone's welcome to listen in on the next section. But if there's no other questions or comments on the EDA process, I'd like to move to the municipal planning grant and introduce Mark Westa. I thought, Wendy, you could just preface it that the select board, where they're at with this contract, and it's official, right?
Yes, they approved it at the last meeting and it's signed and we're ready to go.
Good. Mark, you and I spoke today just to set the stage for tonight, but you have some ideas how to proceed since you've got a fairly aggressive timetable for this project.
Right. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Great to see you again. So yeah, the contract is in place and we've started doing some of our base mapping and looking at the work Antioch's been doing and things like that. And we're really looking for kind of the project kickoff meeting, which was the first, kind of step in our real work that we were getting to. To do that, what I was talking with Bob about was sort of what kind of, interaction we're going to have as far as like a committee structure. And what I was thinking was, there's kind of these different levels of what I need as far as managing the project. And one would be, sort of a point person. And two would be sort of probably a smallish group. And that's kind of where Bob and I were talking, how big a group is kind of the focus group that, or steering committee or whatever we're going to call it, that's going to kind of be able to communicate on a fairly rapid basis and give me some guidance. Obviously, we're going to have the full commission and even community meetings larger groups when we can get some input. But I'm really interested in that idea of sort of if there's going to be a steering committee, how big it's going to be, and if there'll be sort of a point person related to that.
Yeah, I had suggested that as we do on other projects, we can have up to 3 planning commission members meet and discuss projects without triggering the open meeting law requirements for warning a meeting. And that we would have a subcommittee of 3 from the planning commission and perhaps some others from the town. You know, it's open to anyone, in my opinion. Wendy's probably got way too much stuff on her plate to get in on that, and she's performing an administrative function on top of everything. So, but obviously she would be welcome. So we talked about maybe having a special full meeting of the planning commission, and maybe that's where we identify a committee, and not tonight. I had suggested next Wednesday, which is what, the 21st? Yeah. Have a special meeting of the planning commission and invite the select board to co-host it, where the entire agenda is the municipal planning grant, and we figure out the nuts and bolts of our committees, our communication, and you have a number of tasks that involve public forums too.
Right.
So if we also, just to throw a wrinkle in things, 2 of our planning commission members are stepping down, and we're going to hopefully recommend at least 2 to the select board for appointment. And Wendy, would the select board be meeting next week?
Yes, I was just writing you a message.
Oh.
Their regular meeting is planned for Tuesday. They may be able to meet with the planning commission on Wednesday, but that's pretty short notice. So you might want to have a couple of dates for them to choose from.
What I was also wondering, if we appoint or make a recommendation for 2 new members to the planning commission, could they act on that next Tuesday?
If you get it to me by tomorrow.
Okay. We'll see what our outcome is. But so I'm thinking that so that we have our new members involved with this new grant. And I think we should have the meeting on the 21st, and whatever Vernon select board members can make it be fine. And then maybe a future joint meeting, because it is short notice to convene a joint meeting. It may even be short notice for our own committee. We haven't even asked, but we'll talk about that. So
I do think, you know, our part might be fairly short. You know, we don't really have anything to report until we do the kickoff meeting and get to the site and, you know, really think about things. But, you know, we could definitely talk through the idea of organization and the kind of the calendar.
Yeah, and also go over the task. We have
Yeah.
not reviewed it since we submitted the application, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's your task. It's a launch. You had a task to launch the project. So if you're ready for that, we'll do it.
Right. Well, the launching led to the question of who am I launching it to, I guess.
Yeah.
And my preference would be to have, you know, this idea of a point person and a small group, knowing that there's always the bigger group to talk to.
So should you think it would work? I think you and I agreed to do it next Wednesday, at least get going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And it does not have to be a big meeting, you know, so anyone from the planning commission have any comments on the municipal planning grant and our next steps? Okay. All right, then that's about it, Mark, for that. Okay.
Okay.
And we're glad you were listening in on the EDA. Obviously, it's an important part.
Yeah.
What you're
Absolutely.
doing, and that's why Martin introduced you too. So
Yeah, I was glad I could be here for that.
okay, so Our next agenda item is to discuss the two vacancies on the planning commission. Tom Rappaport, thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Tom Rappaport has agreed to stay on until a replacement is selected. Natalia is already done, and so we really have two vacancies. We created a subcommittee for the purpose of talking to candidates, and I got to tell you, we have 4 well-qualified candidates for 2 positions. So it's exciting. And Martin and Maddie and I were that subcommittee. We met in person, of course, socially distanced, with all 4 candidates. It wasn't an interview, it was just, hey, here's the planning commission, here's what we're doing, what's your idea, what is your interest? And our goal tonight is, if we can, to make a recommendation to the select board so we can fill those positions. Martin or Maddie, would you like to comment on the process or what the next steps might be?
I would like to make a motion that we recommend to the select board that they nominate Roger Rulewich and Jim Pinkerton to be the new people on our planning commission. After interviewing and talking to everyone, I was really impressed with everybody's credentials, but I just felt that Roger and Jim really had some really outstanding things that will help us in our progress towards getting all of our goals met. So that's my motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, but I want to acknowledge that Chad was one of those candidates that we interviewed, and also Ken Bloom was someone we spoke with, and so we have to recommend someone. The select board doesn't have to take our recommendation, but they have only 2 seats to fill. So I hope that Chad and Kat, who has been coming to these meetings, stay involved. And there certainly are some other town positions that where there are seats to be filled that Wendy knows about, and anybody can be in touch with her about those. So with that, I'll second the motion.
Is there any other discussion before we vote on the motion?
Looks like Chad has raised his hand.
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I just having the opportunity to sit in and talk with you guys about the planning commission and what you guys do, and I thank you for opening it up to allow us to sit in and listen to how we progress forward with this town and what we're going to do with with different projects and stuff. So I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and Ken Bloom also expressed his appreciation. So yeah, I mean, any of the 4 would be good. But we just voted to recommend Roger Rulewich and.
Well, we haven't voted yet. We need to vote.
Oh, we have to vote. That's right. So all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? I said aye, by the way. Any opposed? Hearing none, then the motion carried. Thanks, Martin and everyone, and Maddie, particularly for, we spent a lot of time sitting around talking to people, and we learned a lot too. Some great ideas out there. We're very happy to have this kind of energy. I am really happy to see the kind of enthusiasm Chad brings to the town, and Ken Bloom, and now our two fellow members. So Wendy, I'll send you an email just confirming this and ask for the board's consideration. And
That sounds great. And if there's any term that I should know, period of time that they're going to serve, include that too, please.
uh,
I don't believe we have terms on this.
no,
Okay.
they're lifetime appointments, Wendy.
It's like the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
Now-
Chad's going, whoa, I'm glad. I didn't-
You're thinking big as they were recommending.
Is it a term or a life sentence?
Yeah, okay. The term. So I'll also let our two new members know tonight and tell them they got to come to the next meeting as long as the select board approves it. So moving on the agenda, we're doing very well here. Review of letters and documents. The only thing I pulled out of our box was quite a bit of information about the upcoming 4th annual Southern Vermont Economy Summit, May 12th, 13th, and 14th. It looks like a fantastic program. And, PDCC, obviously major player. There's a flyer for posting for the speakers. So anyone who's interested and has the time, that would be an excellent opportunity, because we are one of the major planners for economic development in Windham County right now, Vernon.
Could you scan that and email it to us?
Sure. Yep. We'll
Yeah,
do.
and that looks like a good event. Also, BDCC has been having a series, I think it is, of phone calls around economic development. There's one on Monday, which I'm going to, I haven't joined any of the previous ones, but I'm going to try to dial into that one.
Okay, so that's the only thing of note in our correspondence. I don't believe we need an executive session. New business. Is there any new business? I don't have any. Next meeting, can the 4 of us that are here tonight meet next Wednesday at 6:30 on the municipal planning grant? Okay, I figured we could. Wednesday usually. Okay, Jason. And I'll post that meeting, and with Tim, of course. We're at adjourn.
I have a question. Wendy, are you at the town office tomorrow?
Yes, I will be.
Okay, thank you. I'll give you a call.
Okay. I might want to give you my cell just because that's more reliable, but I'll check messages when I'm there in case you call early in the morning.
No, it won't be early. I just need to go over a few things with you for the select board coming up because of this spent nuclear fuel group that I'm on. Thank
Okay,
you.
sure. I'll call you back and we'll definitely connect.
Thank you.
I miss you. Okay.
And Wendy, thanks for participating. I know you bouncing from one meeting to the next. Hopefully.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. I enjoy it. So I'll help out as much as I can on the planning.
Great. Is there a motion to adjourn at, what time is it? 8:04?
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
Jason, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we adjourned. Officially 8:04, Martin, our clerk.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.